right. We got Elijah Johnston in the building here. No,
Sorry,
you're good.
putting my phone on Do Not Disturb.
It's responsible. We don't want any beeps and bloops going on
No.
throughout the episode.
Absolutely
Although
not.
there will be a train at some point. I'm sure.
Probably.
So bear with us if that happens. But yeah, man, thank you for coming in, especially 9 a.m. Thursday morning.
Dude, no, I love it. Early bird.
It's nice to start the day with like a good cup of coffee and conversation. I think.
Yeah. I will definitely. All of my like mind energy will definitely be spent after this, so I will probably just have to not talk to anyone for the rest of the day.
Go back and go to sleep.
Probably, yeah.
Take a little nap.
Yeah.
Talk about why you chose Animal Collective's Merriweather Post Pavilion for your album. If you're listening to the episode, you can go watch it on YouTube and see our faces.
Yeah, and see the album that is placed here in the center of the two of us. I chose Merriweather Post Pavilion because Animal Collective was one of my favorite bands when I was in high school. Still a long-time favorite band of mine. And this was, I don't know that this is my favorite album of theirs, but it's definitely the one that I think for most people, especially people like our age, is like what helped get people into Animal Collective.
Absolutely.
It's the poppiest, the catchiest, the most fun and accessible record they probably ever made. And also relevant to this album was mixed about a mile and a half from here.
I just learned that the
at
other
Chase
day.
Park, yeah. So it's like the only Animal Collective album that has like a real Athens connection to it, which is a lot of fun for me.
Have you been?
I've actually never been to Chase Park, but seems nice.
Yeah, I mean, for them to be mixing there, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, it seems like a good idea, but yeah, it's I don't know. It
is definitely the poppiest.
It's definitely the poppiest,
and as poppy as it is, it's still fucking weird.
It's still pretty strange. Yeah, it's still Animal Collective. So,
but I think everybody kind of gets into My Girls first.
Oh yeah,
and then
like
the gates are open after that.
I just remember like knowing who they were and thinking they were cool and thinking they were kind of like weird, and then hearing like Also Frightened and being like, this is the most insane, like it's crazy that people sing like this and that people still make like melodies and harmonies that are this gigantic.
Yeah, the harmonies are unreal on that song. I also love it's been so long since I've listened to it, but I was definitely a big fan of Guy's Eyes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And Brother Sport, of course.
Brother Sport's crazy.
It's when Brother Sport, I was listening to it just at my house, and my dad came down and he was like, is something wrong with the Alexa? It's like just repeating over and over.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's just the song.
No. The record is not skipping. It's just what
exactly.
It sounds like. Especially like in the middle part where it's just all instrumental. And
That's
it's like,
what he heard. Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, this is a great time for him to come down and be like, what the hell is my son doing right now?
Yeah. I think I've had the same conversation with my parents and relatives before of like, what is that noise? I'm like, just don't even worry about it.
He's like, if you don't get it, you don't get it.
It's just, especially the older Animal Collective stuff. It's like, we're just not even gonna.
That's hard for me to get into.
That's fair.
What's like, what would be the one to get into that is the weirdest? Because I think as far back as I'll go is, I always forget the name. It Feels.
Feels is great. Feels is pretty far out. The one right before it's Sung Tongs, the acoustic one, is really rewarding. If you
that's
can
after, that's before. I do like Sung Tongs.
Okay, yeah.
So I guess before that is when
I mean,
like,
that's a little bit. I'm not as versed in that area just because it's like I've heard it all and it's a little abrasive. The album, it used to be known as Here Comes the Indian.
Yeah, they changed it.
Now it's called Arc. They've retroactively changed the name of the album, which is interesting, but kind of cool. But that one's pretty fun. It's very, very abrasive, but it's also got like a song on there called Slippy that sounds basically like Under the Sea. It sounds like a song from, like melodically, it literally sounds like something from The Little Mermaid. It's very funny. And there's these like crazy synth parts that sound like trumpets, and it's a great song. That whole album is pretty fun.
Yeah, I don't think I ever checked that one out. Maybe once, but definitely
it's definitely still
Sung-Tongs.
super strange, but yeah.
Sung-Tongs was the one that was about as far back as I could get.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, let's move on. I want to talk about Day Off.
Oh boy.
I know it's come out about a year ago now.
I think a few days ago today's the 19th?
Today, I think, is the 19th.
So the 14th was the 1 year anniversary of it.
Wow.
So,
happy birthday.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy birthday.
What are your thoughts about it now that it's a year in?
It's funny to listen back to it because I'm having to like listen to it and think about it a lot and like practice the songs again for the shows, and like I don't know, it's I didn't expect it to have, like, I didn't expect people to really like it a whole lot. Like I thought it was good, but I was like, we'll put it out and we'll play a show and then people will kind of like forget about it and then we'll just move on. And I don't know, it's definitely like had legs, and like my opinion of what I like about it has changed. Like when it came out, I was very like greatest hits, swimming pool, horse girl, like all these like catchy, funny songs, like, you know, whatever. It's great. And then now, like, I feel very strongly about like the kind of the slower ones, and like the like a little, the like Bet the House is the one that when it came out, I was like, I don't know what we're doing with this song. Like, I don't know how I feel about it, because I had written it like I wrote it like so quickly before we recorded it. And then, I mean, the record came out a full year after we finished recording it. And so I had a lot of time to think about it, but it was like, I still was like, I don't know what I feel about that song.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, that's the one that like, I like playing the most and I like listening to the most. And, you know, it's the most fun for me. And the slower ones usually kind of like have stuck around in my mind the most.
It's funny how that usually happens with artists that you love when they put out a record that, you know, at least in my experience, usually an album, like let's take Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, for example. That's now one of my favorite albums ever. But when I first bought it and listened to it, I only liked Jesus, etc. That was the only song. And it's easily like the one that you would get into. Yeah. And then over the course of a few years, I would gradually one by one be like, oh, that song's pretty cool too. That song's pretty cool too. And then it becomes a favorite.
And then you become a Reservations truther.
Exactly, dude. Yes, Reservations is amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's interesting. It happened with you for your own songs.
Yeah. It's definitely like, I don't know. It's been fun also to see it have a life of its own as far as like our friends and the people that like our music, like to see what they react to the most. And Bet the House has been the one that I think that people, especially live, are the most kind of like engaged with, because it's so up and down dynamically, and the guitar solo is so insane. And we've played shows where Cannon can't be there, so there's no lead guitar player, and I'm like completely incapable of playing guitar that way. So generally what happens in that situation is Tommy just turns on the distortion and just plays a bass solo.
Nice.
Which is also very nice. But yeah, it's I don't know. I'm glad that we're able to, because I mean we're about to like tour a little bit and then play more in the spring, and like it's almost like we didn't get to play as much live when the record came out. So it's kind of like we're doing almost like a second push of it, in a
second leg of a tour.
Yeah. Second leg of like promoting the album, which is fun, because I feel like it didn't, I don't know, Strangers came out and the pandemic immediately happened and we never got to go on tour like we thought we were going to. And that Day Off came out and just a bunch of stuff came up and I couldn't go on tour like I thought I was going to be able to, and had to like cancel all this stuff, and I felt so bad, and I just like was really upset about it. And now it's like finally it's having like a moment to breathe a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah.
So
preparing for a tour, what does that look like for you? How are you planning on playing these songs? Have they kind of like, has it given it new life now that it's been a year?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, we're gonna play them with pedal steel guitar, which will be fun.
I'm guessing Canon.
Yeah, Canon will be playing the pedal steel. Yeah, I mean, the way I'm preparing for it right now is I'm just having to like practice singing a lot because I've been like a little. I'm sure you can tell from my husky, sexy 9 a.m. voice, but I've been a little like in and out of under the weather for a couple weeks, and my voice has just been kind of shot, and so, and I also like, I'm the kind of person that, and this is like not good, but I will get really out of the routine of practicing the guitar or singing, and I'll go to do it and be like, I feel like I'm playing guitar with my left hand sometimes. Like, I'll pick it up and be like, do I know how to do this anymore? So it's just been a lot of like making sure I still know how to play my songs. And I don't know. It's funny. I have to remind myself to like be the artist and not just like the booking agent, because like I'm like trying to figure out all these like logistics stuff. And I literally was sitting there yesterday and I was like worried. I was like, there's got to be something else I've got to do. And then I was like, I'm pretty much done with like the logistics are done. Like, we just got to get in the car and go.
Right.
But I just have to make sure I play right and sing right, you know, like, and that's the part that
the stuff that's like super important.
Yeah, it is. But it's also, that's the stuff that's like scarier if you focus on it. Like, focusing on like emailing people and looking at a spreadsheet is way less painful than thinking about like, am I going to like sing am I going to remember all the words to my own music, which I'm not always the best at doing, but it's more telling, I guess, of where you are, whereas writing up an email isn't gonna send you into like a panic attack, because you realize you can't like write. So I don't know, it's been fun to prep for it, and it's just so funny. We always joke that like we're like a very not, like, my band like just doesn't practice very often.
Love it.
And I'm I'm glad you love it.
We're winging it.
It's fun. It's just a funny thing because like Gideon once looked at me and he was like, this is what you get for having a backing band that's full of people who also have bands and write songs. Like it's not a band full of people that are like just session music or like just people that play in bands. Like, it's people that are the front people of bands. Of
every other band.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, schedules are a little hard to make line up, but thankfully it lines up so that we can actually all go on the road together. And I don't know, we've played enough shows that have like gone quite well on not a lot of prep that I'm like, we'll be all right.
Yeah.
We'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, at some point everybody gets on the same wavelength and you just ride that.
Yeah, these songs aren't rocket science, you know.
But you know, I do love what you said about the fact that they're not session musicians. Everybody's kind of the front man of their own project. But I think that's a very charming thing about Athens is that I don't know, to me, everybody's so down to have their own project and also be on somebody else's.
I know. I mean, and that's the thing is like, that's what I'm very honored by is like Gracie didn't have to play in my band. Lighthearted is a big deal. Like, Lighthearted is a incredible band that a lot of people listen to. She doesn't have to be the keys player in my band. And, you know, Cannon goes on tour. Cannon the Boxes is a great band that people like. He does not have to be in my band. Tommy does not have to be in my band at all. Like, you know, my brother doesn't really have to be in my band.
Shout out Gideon.
Yeah, shout out. He but like he's they're all really busy people, and but it's nice. It's worked out really well.
It's a very strong, like, just community. It seems like.
Yeah, no, it's a nice unit, and we have a lot of fun. It'll be fun to be out there on the road for a week with those people because often we don't. We don't like tour a whole lot. Like genuinely, this is, I think, what I would say is literally like the first real tour after years of playing in Athens and playing in Atlanta and going to Nashville once a year or something like that. Like,
where are you going? What are the dates so people can know?
Chattanooga on the 21st, Nashville on the 22nd, Asheville, North Carolina on the 25th, Durham on the 26th, Charleston on the 27th, Savannah on the 28th.
Wow.
So it's a nice little, like, go up to Tennessee and then make a nice little U around the Carolinas, which will be great. And I don't know, it'll be a good time.
Which one are you looking forward to the most, do you think?
I mean, probably Savannah. Savannah and Nashville are the one. Like Nashville, like we're playing with my friend. We had a shirt on, Legit Smitty. I don't know if you can see it, but
nice. He's with Snoopy on there.
Oh yeah, he's just a fantastic singer-songwriter. And this other guy named Macho Planet, another great, like kind of like acoustic singer-songwriter type situation. And I like playing in Nashville. Like, I feel like people have a lot of feelings about playing in Nashville or like being there or like what it means, or it's this big existential weight on people because like there's everybody there does music,
right?
So there's a lot of like mixed feelings. I don't live there, so I don't have to get mixed up in that.
Yeah,
I just know that
nice?
I just know that when I'm there, I have friends there, and it's good to see them, and I like playing. And usually there's like a decent crowd, so it's like this is fun. And then Savannah, we're gonna end in Savannah, and Savannah's just like always a party. And our friend Anna, did you meet Anna when she was here recording?
I don't think so. What's her last name?
Kellum. She's
no,
like
I don't think I did.
She's from down there, and she's like a great. From everything I've gleaned, is she's kind of just like a scene legend. Like she like helps book bands, and she helps like a lot of people do stuff. And she's been making music, kind of like she's been writing for a long time, and is like putting out these songs that she did with Tommy that are like unbelievable. They like they're like pop hits.
Nice.
And
I'll have to listen to them.
So yeah, we're gonna end the tour playing with her and with Lighthearted and Mary Margaret in Savannah, and so it's just gonna be a big, like, you know, a big party, a big community sort of feeling. So
nice.
Yeah.
So you playing one in Athens?
We're actually not doing one in Athens.
Oh man.
I know. We're game planning what the next Athens show will be.
Got you.
It'll probably be a little bit.
So going back to Day Off, the new album, yes. I just have a couple questions because I was listening to it last night, and I was like, let me just write down some things that pop into my head. One, the guitar tone on Swimming Pools.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
What's
going on there? Is it a flanger?
I think so. This is a little more of a Tom question, but yeah. I think that it's like some sort of probably a flanger, probably like a really far out chorus on that lead. That kind
it's
of
just like cuts through so well.
Yeah. It's that song has like so many guitars on it. It's so like listening to it, just I think back on being like exhausted in the mixing room, just like my ears being assaulted by all those guitars. But yeah, I think it's a flanger, and then like there's like, yeah, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and vocally you're just going for it at the end.
Yeah, I had to when I wrote it as like kind of like a little more of like a sleek, like it's gonna sound the whole song was gonna be a little sleeker, a little kind of more like smooth out. And I was gonna sing like falsetto most of it, or kind of like I don't know, it was gonna be like almost more like a spoon song, you know.
Love it, dude. I'm back in my spoon phase right now.
Yeah. And Gid and Tommy were like, what if it was like a little bit more not that? And Gid was like, what if it sounded like a metal song? And I was like, okay. And then and Tom was like, you're just gonna have to sing a little different for that feeling. And it worked, you know. I like that song. I like the vocal on it. I was like wandering around the living room just like
nice. Nice.
But yeah, it was fun. It's a fun time,
dude. I love that one. And then of course the atmospheric ending on at the end of On a Good Day. Speaking of reservations, you mentioned that earlier. That gives me that kind of like the calm after the storm.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where did that idea come from? Was it always there, or did it hit you later?
You mentioned so it was always, the plan with that song was always for it to have like the movements, like the kind of country rock main part of the song. The whole idea was I want most of the song to sound like Peaceful Easy Feeling by the Eagles. And then to have the outro sound like where it gets to the like the crazy shoegaze guitars. I was like, I want it to basically be like the idea I had was I was like, I want it to sound like My Bloody Valentine plus Freebird.
Love it.
Where it like speeds up like Freebird, but then it like has like the crazy like washed out shoegaze guitars, and then when it crashes out and it has the atmospheric ending, going back to Feels, that was really inspired by the end of that album, Turn Into Something.
Okay.
Because that song, the last song on Feels by Animal Collective, when it fades out, they're just kind of repeating the hook of the song with the drums, and it's like rather than like the part ending, they just like fade the drums out and the vocal, and a second like piece sort of fades on top of it. Like this ambient kind of washy section, and where it's just basically like one chord for like a couple minutes, this really beautiful ambient ending. And I kind of wanted to just recreate this thing of like crashing out and then just holding on like one suspended like long chord. I was like, that's just it was a very inspiring thought to me. And yeah, we just sat there and like held on the organ keys and like shook the cymbals around, and like we had the vocal mic set up from our gang vocals, and I like walked away from it and was like like funny stuff like that, and making train noises with the delay pedal. And
I was gonna say
like
I felt like I heard like train tracks.
It's literally just like the delay pedal. It's so crazy. Yeah.
I assumed y'all went with a field mic over to the train tracks, right outside of our house.
It sounds so much like a train. We were looking at each other like, what did we just do? But, or like, and I think we put like everything through like the crystallizer. So it's like all these like weird arpeggiated notes that the computer made up that just kind of make it all sing a little bit more.
So cool.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun too, of like liking Animal Collective and really liking like One of Trick's Point Never and a lot of like ambient music and stuff like that. And
yeah, you're very all over the place, I've noticed.
It's fun to like that stuff and have collaborators who don't really know it, and not in like a negative way, but they just like, we don't all know or like the same stuff, and to be able to kind of like explain it to them of like, this is what I want in my song, and we kind of like tamp it down. Like, I don't need like a 10-minute ambient track, but having like 30 seconds of like strange vocal samples, I can like explain it of like, we can use it as a piece, of this puzzle. So
kind of reminds me of when I was talking with Cannon maybe a month ago. We were talking about his Steve Earle cover, and it's funny because that's the only Steve Earle song I know, and I love it. So I was pumped when he told me he was going to release that.
Yeah.
And he was saying when he recorded it with Patrick that he basically didn't, like, Patrick had never heard the song, and
That's awesome.
He didn't want him to hear the song.
That's very cool.
So they basically just, and it's funny because it sounds
so much like it.
Yeah.
In a good way. Like, it's such a
It's not a carbon
cover.
copy, but faithful is a great word.
Yeah.
And Patrick had never heard it until after they recorded it.
Yeah. He probably also realized that like the style of that song that it's originally recorded in is very like in Patrick's wheelhouse, but
yeah, totally.
In a very good way. But so yeah.
And then of course you got to mention Horse Girl featuring Zach Crook. I mean, that's gotta, after everything we've talked about, Animal Collective, all these weird One of Tricks Point Never artists and crazy things, and then to think that you love all that and then made Horse Girl.
Yeah.
Biggest pop hit of our generation.
It was I mean, the story I always tell is like, this was like, we wrote that song in like 2019, I think, in the summer. And so Zach had been just like trying to write with other people is the way he explained it to me. Of just like he was kind of like doing like co-writes and not really getting anywhere, and it was just sort of like bumming him out. And I was like, man, I got this idea. Let's just write you and me, and we'll write like a funny song, like a song that isn't really like
just a joke.
It's
song.
just like a silly, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, all right, and we were sitting around his house, and it was just like, what's a funny idea that we can just ideate on? And at the time, the idea of the horse girl thing was funny to us because that was like when that was like right around when that Casey Musgraves album had come out, Golden Hour. And so we were just like, it's so funny that like we see so many people wearing like, you know, the kind of like the like grocery store pink cowboy hat with the cheap rhinestones on it. And it was this very in thing to look like, you know, you were into like country music or cowboy stuff or whatever. And I think the joke was kind of like, but they don't, you know, they're all fakers because like we grew up with real horse girls. And like, you know, they're the OG they're horse the ones girls. And we were like, that's something. And it was it was just the chorus at first of like, I don't care if you're a horse girl. And we were just like, as soon as we were playing it, we were just looking at each other like, I think we have something here. But the big thing was that we were also like talking about it in a way that was very like, I don't know, and this might be ruining it, but it's like we were thinking about like pop songs and like the chord progressions, and we were like, we've got to use what we call like we were thinking of it as like the cheat code chord progression, where it's like the 1 major, the 2 minor, the 6 minor, and then the 4 major.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically the chord progression you see in the song Halo. And basically, and there's like a lot of big pop songs that uses progression where basically it starts at the 1 of the song, like it starts at home base, and then it rises in this like tense way to the minor, and then it goes down to another minor, and then it like resolves back at like a pleasant 4 chord. And it's like you hear it all the time and you don't even realize it. And we were like, that's like the cheat code chord progression, and that's the chord progression for the chorus. Because
take notes, listeners.
We were like, oh, that's so like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, the song Halo was the one that we were like. That's what's I like made a playlist one time of all the songs that inspired the record. And it's like Alan Jackson and Halo for that song.
I feel like that's very Zach Crook, especially because he loves some R&B and then some 2000s country.
Yes, he loves all
Big and
stuff.
Rich, whatever, all those dudes.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear you explain it like that, because that was the first song I ever heard of yours, and then to go from, I mean, such a accessible pop song to songs like Hornet's Nest with all these weird textures and everything. It's very not like all over the place and yet cohesive at the same time, which is really cool.
Yeah, it was definitely, I don't know, I feel like every album I make, I run into this problem where I'm like, this is the record where we're going to make it really cohesive and like of a piece.
Yeah.
And then we get going and I'm like, let's make that sound like the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then we end up with like 8 songs that just sound completely different. I'm like, oh no, not again.
But also it comes from the same source.
Right. And that's the thing is like, so many of my favorite artists like don't stick in one spot. I don't know. I was listening to an interview the other day with do you know that guy Christopher Owens? You know that band Girls?
I think I know the band Girls.
Yeah, he's like the lead singer, and he was talking about when Girls started. I mean, Girls is like a classic indie 2000s band, just like the prettiest, most accessible choruses, like so 50s and 60s sounding. And he was talking about when they started, he was like, every band we were playing with or that we were in the scene with, their thing was like their sound of like, their thing was like, we play like one style and one sound and we're like really good at it and we're really cool. And he was explaining, he was like, and then when girls started, it was like, I'm going to write songs and I don't think anyone's going to think this is cool because I'm going to sing really direct sentences that people can understand very intelligibly, and sonically it might be a little all over the map. And hearing that, I was like, oh, thank God. Like, it was nice to hear it explained that way, where it was like, I feel like that is the conclusion I've come to in the last few years of like, it feels cooler to be like, I have like a sound, like we are like this kind of band. And if you're good at it, it's very great. Like if you're good at like the one thing, like if you're like, we are a shoegaze band and you nail it, it's like great. But it's like tough when I don't like, I just can't do that. Like there's not one sound that I feel so passionately about where I'm like, I have to do this thing. I'm more like, I want to write this song, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, taking it piece by piece and letting the universe decide how cohesive it's going to be. Because I'm with you. I feel like anytime I want to think ahead and be like, okay, no, I'm going to take these artists and add this artist and this influence, and then I'll make it my own. And then, you know, a week later, I'm into like 3 other new artists. And then I'm like, well, what do I do with the other ones? You know, it's a constant soup being made.
Well, I mean, it's like we always joke about Drew, our friend Drew Beskin. He will give you like 10 songs and be like, okay, this is what we're shooting for with this new song. And it's like the Bee Gees, Hanson,
nice,
the Backstreet Boys, and then like 70s folk music, like Van Morrison, like it's all this stuff. And he's like, this is kind of the vibe we're going for. And we'll be like, Drew, that makes like, I don't know what you like.
We got to distill this down.
Do we want to have like break beats and strings? Like, is that what we're going for? And then when we play it, it like sounds like a Drew Beskin song. Like it sounds like a rock and roll, you know, like sloppy but not sloppy Drew Beskin song. And it's like, oh, like that stuff can all be there in spirit, even if it doesn't bear out in like strictly like textural sonic terms, or it can be there in sonic terms and you don't even mean for it to be. Like that's the thing that I think is so interesting, is like people will be like, what inspires you or whatever, and I'll tell them like, you know, like Panda Bear and ambient music and like Paul McCartney and stuff like that, and people are like, this just kind of sounds like Death Cab for Cutie. And I'm like growing up I'd like never listened to stuff like that, or like there's like been other bands that people have said I sound like, and I'm like, I've like never heard that before.
That's
and it's
funny.
like sonically it points them to that, but like in my mind I know like the spirit comes from, or the inspiration comes from like whatever else I was into, you know.
Yeah, that is funny you say Death Cab, because I did hear some Ben Gibbard in your voice a little bit.
I used to think it was a little, not insulting, but I used to think it was, I didn't love that comparison, and now I'm like, now it's like they're great.
He's
like,
got a unique voice.
He's got a great voice.
Yeah. I never quite got into Death Cab, but my mind exploded when I heard Postal Service for the first time.
Interesting.
Like, I don't know, just Death Cab never really did it for me. I don't know if I've tried that hard. I think I will, what is it? I will something your heart. I will
possess your heart.
I will possess your heart.
Just throw on Transatlanticism one day if you're like in the car.
Yeah.
It's just a really nice, cohesive record, great melodies. Like, you know, that's the one. I think that's the one that most people like the most, and I see why. It's probably the best. But it's
I just like the weirdness of the Postal Service, of that indie-tronic thing.
Yeah.
Everything's so catchy, but it's also unhinged. Like the sounds are like, who in their mind thought that they could put these weird samples in here? Yeah, and it works. It's awesome.
For sure.
Definitely big inspiration there. Couple extra questions before we get to the last 5. what do you feel like is a song that you've written that's surprised you the most? Whether that be in the moment or even later down the line.
Surprised me the most. Oh my Lord. I think we have a song that is not out yet that we play live sometimes. It's called Downtown Living.
Dude, drop it. I love that song. I'm so glad you brought that up.
It's like I was a little bit surprised when we played it live for the first time that it like worked the way it was in my mind, and then it like happened, and I was like, this is a really cool thing. It's like, I don't know, I've never written anything like that. Like, you know, like I love the Talking Heads, I love Parquet Courts, I love Jonathan Richman and the Velvet Underground and stuff like that.
It kind of reminds me of a Father John Misty song as well. Like,
weird.
I don't know if you know Ideal Husband, I think is the name of it.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of reminds me of that.
Okay, that's very interesting. I would have never thought about that, but I was actually listening to that record the other night, and okay, that's cool.
This like manic preaching.
Yes,
feeling.
It's definitely going for like almost like the vocal sounding a little bit like a street preacher. A little bit.
Yeah.
Because it was inspired by like I had COVID a couple years ago, and I was living in this like apartment that nobody lived in downtown, and it was a weird set of circumstances, but I was like, just me and Gid had COVID in this nice giant apartment, and I was just like, all I could hear every night when I was trying to go to sleep was like people just absolutely throwing down because we were like not very high off the ground, and all the bars were right underneath us, and I was just like, oh man, this sucks. And I was watching the movie. I watched the movie Thief by Michael Mann. And then I watched Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads documentary. And the two things together, I was like, I gotta make a song. And I don't know. I like was really, when I wrote it, I was like, dang, I didn't know. I didn't know I had that gear of like writing like a shouty like rock song. Like I've never really thought of myself as like a rock guy. And like even when I do it, like Swimming Pool to me feels very like pastiche. Like I'm like clearly like trying on it's like wearing a suit that doesn't fit me type vibe. But with Downtown Living, I was like, I feel like this is a little bit more convincing. And I'm like stoked about it. So yeah, that's probably one that's really surprised me.
That's wild, because when you played that live for the first time, or at least when I heard it for the first time, I kind of thought the same. I was like, this is an Elijah Johnston original. Like, what is this? This is crazy. Yeah. The energy was like unreal.
Yeah. It feels like a fake song. It feels like a cover in a way, which I like.
It's, and it's basically like almost just one chord.
It's basically like one chord for 90% of the song. And then there's like a quick turnaround of like two chords that are very fast.
Yeah.
So
was that hard for you to like accept? Because for me, I have to like find weird ways to change it to make it interesting. But how many songs are great that are two chords, that are one chord?
I was like really fighting with it when I wrote it. I was like trying to figure out ways for it to be more melodic, like where I could sing the part with a little bit more like pizzazz and like fun melody. And then I was like, no, I just have to bark. Like the chord thing wasn't hard for me. It was more like the vocal. I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like the script. And then we played it live, and I like just was like, I'll just try like doing a little more shouty and talky, and it like worked way better than my attempts at like singing almost like Sinatra singing on top of that beat. I was like, this is stupid.
Doesn't quite work, but yeah, you got to try different things and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of when that will be out, or maybe when the new record will be dropping?
That is TBD.
TBD.
Probably this fall.
Okay.
Is the goal for the album.
I'm very curious, especially that one. I want to hear it so bad.
Yeah.
But the last question I have before we go to the last 5 here.
Yeah.
If you could go back and give yourself advice about songwriting or just anything in music in general, back to when you really started.
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself?
Probably have a better habit of practicing the guitar.
Very practical.
Yeah. That, or just like, just tell myself like, hey man, it is like nothing, very little. There's going to be a lot of things that happen to you that you won't like, and none of it is personal. Like, that's the thing I think that I've like had that problem my whole life. Like, anytime something like goes wrong, I'm like, it's because this person hates me. It's not like,
dude,
they couldn't make it. It's like, they despise me. And I'm like lower.
Disgusting.
I'm lower than the dirt to this person. And like, the thing is that it's not true.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, if somebody's like, I can't do that for you, I can't help you there, it's like, okay.
Right. Yeah, you got to unlearn that way of thinking. I'm still working on that.
It took me a long time to realize that a venue in a city I've never been to before telling me, I don't think we're going to book your show, dude. We have no idea who you are. That's a very like reasonable business decision. And like, not like a
reflection on you as a human.
Not like, yeah, I think that's the big thing that I've had that I wish I would have figured out a little quicker.
So that and practice guitar more.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Some spiritual and practical advice.
Yes,
I like
precisely.
It. Cool. That's going to take us to the last 5. Just going to ask you 5 quick questions and we'll be all done.
Absolutely.
Number 1, in the studio or playing live?
Dude, playing live, absolutely.
No hesitation with that.
Studio is like, I like making the good stuff happen, but the process of it is a little bit mind-numbing for me.
Mm-hmm. It can get dull, especially if you're just sitting on the couch, like listening to the same snare EQ for an hour.
I just like don't have the mind for that. I'm much more like, I sit around and think about like, what am I going to do on stage? Like, I think about like my movement and like stage banter and like stuff like that. I'm very rarely thinking about like studio stuff.
How much of one informs the other? Do you feel like your live performance like affects your studio time?
I definitely think it does. I don't know, every time we recorded something in the past few years, it's been like Day Off and then this new record, it's been stuff that we have like really not been playing live. And then we play it in the studio and then we have to, or like record it and then we have to kind of like relearn it live. I definitely try not to let myself think, oh, I can't add this to the song because I can't recreate it live. Like, I'm very much like, if I can't make it happen live, that's okay. And like, if there's a thing live that doesn't work or I'm like too attached to, I try to be okay about if someone, like if Tommy or someone else is like, hey man, that's cool live, but we don't really need to do that in the recording. I try to be a little bit more like, I think that like some bands are like, you see them live and it's like, oh, that's all I want. And like, they want their records to sound like the live show.
Right.
And that's like very valid. And I just don't think that that's the situation that we're in. Like, the studio recording stuff is like its own thing and the live experience is like its own thing. And at the same time, like, I don't really want to go, I mean, some bands you want to like, they sound exactly like they do on the record and that's fine, but I don't really want to do that.
Yeah. And it depends on the kind of music you make and the kind of stuff you want to put out.
Exactly.
Like if you're a garage rock band, you're the Strokes, you know, it's great when you go and see them and then it's exactly what you expected, right? But if you're going to go see Animal Collective,
right, you
understand like it's going to be different.
Air to it. Yeah, for sure.
Question number 2 is, what do you think is a perfect album front to back? No skips.
So many. Honestly, probably the one I almost put out on here, Ram, the Paul
runner-up.
Linda. Yeah, I don't know, man. That album really took me by the Collar recently. I don't know. Yeah,
I love that album.
It's so good.
I got to be honest though, Monkberry Moon Delight doesn't need to be on there.
That's fair. That's fair.
If it was a minute and a half, 2 minutes, I'd be
long.
okay. It's the longest song on the album.
Long,
it's like 5 minutes long, and he's like sounds like a dwarf or an ogre.
That's true. Yeah, he has so many voices. I was talking about that with Philip Brantley recently. Phil Throttle. He was like, Paul's just got so many voices. Like it's amazing. It's a really cool thing. But yeah, Ram. I know I mentioned him earlier. One of Tricks Point Never, like that album Replica.
Love it.
Is a classic for me.
I had a phase of that maybe 2 years ago where I'd listen to it every day.
It's so crazy. The third Vampire Weekend album, Modern Vampires in the City.
Yeah.
Love that.
I forgot about that
Absolutely love that album. Yeah. Those are the first one that come to mind when I think of like no skips, like everything is solid.
I wasn't expecting Vampire Weekend, or at least that album, because that one's great. Obvious Bicycle is a classic song.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Step.
Yahe,
that's right. Hannah Hunt.
Oh,
I can't remember. There's one more that I really loved.
Diane Young.
Yeah. What did you think of Father of the Bride?
I didn't love it. I can't lie to you.
It's a little bloated.
It's a little too jammy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that it seems like that album came from a place of those guys being relaxed enough as people and enjoying themselves to be like, let's try something different.
Yeah.
After the kind of stuffiness and the aesthetic of Vampire Weekend. But yeah, it was a little bummer. It was also like pretty clear, like, I don't know. I feel like they probably won't do much else after that.
Yeah, they don't really need to either.
It was such a big deal of how long they waited to put that album out. And then it came
the first one without Rostam, right?
Yes. Another big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And now it just kind of feels like, I don't know if anything else will happen. And it's kind of sad. But I mean, that moment in my life where like, when the third album came out, I was like a freshman in high school. And I was like, this is the best band in the world. Like, this is the best band ever. And I don't know. It's nice to be into a band when they're kind of like hitting their zenith.
And
dude,
you just feel it.
It's been a really fun year to be like a 1975 fan. Like that's been It's been very exciting. Like, I mean, I saw them live a few years ago and was like, this is great. This is an amazing band. And then the 2020 album came out and I was like, this is great. And then like seeing them live this time, I was like...
You saw them live this time?
This time, yeah. We went and saw them in Atlanta.
At their very best?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, this is like, they are not joking. Like, this is a very big band who is like firing on all cylinders. And
I've heard it's incredible.
It's a fun show. Yeah. Quitting heroin will do that to you. It'll make you have a little more pep in your step.
Yeah, I would imagine. Dude, I've told this story ad nauseum on this podcast, but I claim the 1975 is like my hipster band that made it, because I found them because they opened for The Neighborhood when I went to see them at Center Stage.
In probably like 2012?
It was probably 2014. If I had to guess, it was before the album came out. The first album came out, and they were opening for The Neighborhood. Like 8 people in the audience knew who they were.
That's prime time, dude. Yeah, that's crazy.
It was when he had the really weird half mohawk situation.
I actually really did not like that album when it came out.
That was like my senior year, dude, was listening to that album.
My friends were really, really into it, and I was like, this band sucks. And then the second album came out, and I was like, this band still sucks.
Dude,
and then the third one came out, and I was like, I'm an idiot. This band is amazing.
That's so funny, man. I was the opposite. The first 2 albums I was so into, and then the third one came out, I was like, it's okay. Fourth one came out, I was like, I don't get this. This is just insane.
Yeah.
And then I got hooked back in on the new one.
Yeah.
But I've since gone back.
Whatever works.
And there's some great stuff on online relationships. And still, there's only a couple songs on whatever the
fourth one. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a weird one. That's all over the place.
Pretty out there.
Yeah. Question number 3. Who's your dream artist or producer to work with?
That's a really good question. I don't know. There's part of me is like, oh man, I'd love to like, like record with whatever crazy artist, like weird artist I like. But there are moments where it's like, I'd love to like write a pop song for somebody. Like I'd love to like chop it up with like someone like Casey Musgraves or like Lana or like someone like that and be like, let me just help you write a bridge. Like I'd love
that would be cool.
That's the kind of stuff that like is so interesting to me. Like the pop songwriting craft is like something I'm trying to like understand and learn a little bit more about, because like it's just so interesting. Like there's like 20 people who write like hundreds of songs that are like making them billionaires. Like it's a crazy world. And so I don't know. Yeah, probably like honestly, probably Lana.
Very interesting choice.
I would absolutely, because I feel like I mean I like her music, but I would totally write one of those songs. I would put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
Wow, I wouldn't have expected that, but yeah, she's an icon for a reason. I honestly haven't listened to much of her stuff other than like oddly ultraviolet or ultraviolence.
Yeah.
When that came out, just because I really liked the Black Keys and what's his name
Dan
produced it. He produced it. So I was like, oh, let me check it out.
Yeah.
And that's like one nobody talks about, that album.
Yeah.
I like picked a really strange niche of her to get into.
Yeah.
But she's obviously, she's still around, still an icon. Yeah. I'm still pissed at my friend for getting way too drunk at Music Midtown. I had to take care of him instead of watch Lana.
Sad.
I know.
Sad.
I know. But
shout out that guy.
Yeah, Jackson, you son of a bitch. Fucking asshole. I wrote down who I'd love to see you work with, produce like an album, would be Jim O'Rourke.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's a legend.
He's like, I feel like almost Brian Eno-esque.
Yes.
But in like an Americana way.
Brian Eno. Yeah, I was thinking about like the whole like Remain in Light thing that he did, and that I feel like Jim O'Rourke does a similar kind of thing where it's like taking what an artist has made and being like, I'm gonna employ these strange like tactics to like tear it apart.
Yeah.
And then kind of rebuild it in a way that's a little more interesting. Like that's the thing they say about Brian Eno with Remain in Light, was he was like taking like the reason Once in a Lifetime by Talking Heads has those cymbal crashes in very weird spots. If I'm remembering this correctly, it's like Brian Eno took the like isolated cymbal track, and he just like moved it back by like a beat or forward by a beat. So it's like the cymbals are never happening where they should happen. And it's because he
keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it's because he was just like, it's more interesting that way.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay. Like, and I feel like Jim O'Rourke does like a similar kind of thing. Like, I mean, that's the story you hear about with Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, is like, just
they like brought the mixes to him and then let him have his way with it. And then they came back and they're like, what in the world?
What
this is
did you
awesome.
do?
Yeah. That's so cool. Somebody can have a mind like that to take something pretty conventional and just fuck it up in the best way possible.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, Jim O'Rourke. I also wrote Ben Gibbard, but I think we already covered that territory. Number 4, what's on your musical rotation right now?
Oh Lord. Let me honestly, I'm gonna have to
check
look at my Spotify real fast. I get really stuck on like the same stuff over and over again. I've been re-listening a lot to that band Girls, and the Christopher Owens solo album. I've been honestly, man, very like history minded recently. I've been on like a little bit of like an REM kick recently, like getting into the history of where I come from.
Yeah.
And yeah, my girlfriend Caroline she loves REM, and so like she was kind of the one that was like, you don't understand, dude, like, you know. And so like those first like 2 or 3 like we were listening to Reckoning the other day, and I was just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is so good.
REM took me a second to get into. It actually took the first album for me to be like, oh, whoa.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, Murmur's like maybe the best. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
They had something going on there that was I mean, I knew Losing My Religion, Night Swimming, like the hits.
Yeah.
And tried to listen to those albums. I'm like, I don't know, just can't quite get into it.
Yeah.
And Murmur was like, oh, I'm all in.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. It's an absolutely insane album. So yeah, that's kind of been where I've been at recently.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Bandsplain?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Have you listened to any of it?
I've heard the REM episode.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And like the Lemonheads episode.
Damn, I thought I was going to be putting you on to something new. Yeah, they're great. Love Yasi.
Oh yeah, it's a great show.
REM's was a really good one.
That was a really good episode.
Nowadays, sorry, go ahead.
I
was just going to say, nowadays, I just pick any random one because I really like the way they go through the history of bands, even if I don't listen to them.
You should check out, if you haven't heard, the Lemonheads episode.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool.
I've never really even listened to the Lemonheads.
I had not listened to them much either before that podcast, and it's like very cool.
Okay.
Very catchy, like very pretty pop songs. Like it's really rad.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check that one out. I was listening to the PJ Harvey one because I never really listened to her, and then I was like, oh my God, her story is insane.
I'll have to check that out. So I went back and I don't know anything about that.
PJ Harvey's wild. She is very just out there, but super catchy still, and very grungy, at least first couple of albums.
Yeah. Word up.
Last question here. What's your favorite decade of music? And also, what's the worst?
I've heard this question on here before, and I was like mentally preparing myself. I think, to keep my long-winded answer sort of short, I used to be of the opinion that the 90s was my least favorite. Just because when I first heard like stuff like Third Eye Blind and like Matchbox 20 and like stuff like that, I couldn't really it's just like the texture of that kind of like pop rock is so strange to me. Like I just couldn't like wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
And now I love that stuff. I think generally my favorite like the decade where most of my favorite music has come from would be like the 2000s, like 2000 to 2010. Like I love like all the indie rock stuff of that. That's like the formative music for me, is that era. And then I love like, did you hear my stomach make that noise? That was crazy.
That was awesome.
That was very insane.
We're leaving that in. I'm going to spike the volume as soon as that happens.
Please do. It was super weird. So I think that's my favorite era, is like the 2000s. I don't know that I have like a concrete like least favorite. Yeah. I generally think of like the 70s as kind of like where I don't really know what's going on. Because like I'm not like a disco hater, but I'm also not like a fiend for it. And like pop music in general in the 70s like kind of like doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And like the rock stuff, that like the rock artists that I liked from the 60s really like bottomed out, like the John Lennon solo stuff and like the weird,
not
like,
a fan.
I don't love all of it. The like freaked out Beach Boys stuff. It's just like it's a little
Beach Boys got a little weird there.
Everyone's a little too burned out. The Stones were, it's just like not all, actually the Stones stuff in the 70s I like, but like there's just like a lot of like stuff, and I have heard this question come up before because the 80s always comes up.
Yes, always.
I'm very pro.
Okay.
I'm very pro like Madonna.
An 80s apologist.
Yes, very pro Madonna, pro Pat Benatar. Heaven is a Place on Earth. Like I love that kind of music.
Okay.
Grew up listening to that. Although I guess Billy Joel was in the 70s. So maybe I can't hate on the 70s too much.
Well, that's the thing.
Billy Joel and Elton John. I do like that kind of stuff a lot.
I mean, you'll find yourself talking in circles if you start to like question your choice here, because there's always going to be,
I think,
2 or 3 artists that you really like from that era.
It's just hard say the 70s.
Yeah,
doesn't really connect with me a lot.
There's a lot of people who would crucify you for saying that.
That's okay. That's fine. They also don't love, Bon Jovi.
Yeah, dude, Living on a Prayer.
Dude,
Bad Medicine.
Song.
Oh man, but see, that's the thing. That's what's keeping me away from the '80s. And I grew up on it, but I'm like, dude, I don't need to hear another Night Ranger song.
That's true. There is a lot of hair metal that sucks.
Yeah, or Loverboy. Sorry, parents.
It's okay.
I've seen, and this is coming from a guy who's seen Journey twice.
That's insane.
Yeah, 2 times, and the Filipino guy. That sounds exactly like
he's
Steve
really
Perry.
Good. He's really good. Yeah, Steve Perry.
Yeah, he is really good, and he's tiny and much younger, than everybody else on stage. It's so funny. Yeah, but that voice, so powerful.
It's got it.
But yeah, dude, Elijah Johnston. That is going to conclude our time here on that note. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for coming on the show, man.
Yes, sir.
Good luck on tour. What are the dates and where you're going again?
21st through the 28th, we will be in Chattanooga, Nashville, Asheville, North Carolina, Durham, Charleston, and Savannah.
Nice. Everybody go check them out.
And then
it's going to be a blast.
This spring in
very,
Athens
very cool.
and Atlanta, hopefully.
Hell yeah. Cool, man. Well, thank you for coming on, dude. It's been a blast.
Yeah.
All right. Check you later.
Bye-bye.
Well, I don't care if you're a horse girl.
Thank you again for joining me for another episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. If you haven't yet, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, and you can even leave a comment down below to let me know who you're listening to. On that note, I'll see you guys next time.